What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today's video for Palworld here is going to be talking about the best combat pals that we have in the game, with a couple different categories for you, with those good attack skills or partner skills, turning them into flamethrower, grenade launcher, as well as the changing our personal player attack to a certain damage type. So like dark, fire, ground really helps when you're going into some of those tower bosses as well as those alpha pals. And then last, we're going to go over just the overall best pals for attack and combat based on some stats with HP, attack, and defense, kind of combining them together just to show what the most overpowered pals are based on stats alone. These are base stats without any of the addition of like a muscle head, ferocious legend that adds all that multiplier onto attack damage. So that'll be the last thing we go over, but first off, we're going to go over those pals with good partner skills that I think everybody should kind of go for from early to middle to end game. The first couple that we have is that Fox Parks as well as the Penglet. So first off, the Fox Parks early game with that flamethrower, you can craft it, hold it in your arm, and basically melt everything early game up to like level 15, 20 is basically when I use this too. Very effective partner skill. Penglet is kind of the same way. The rocket that the Penglet turns into is a damage machine, can wipe out some pretty good enemies early on, some of those alpha pals in the dungeons, etc. Just know that when you do use that, the Penglet does become incapacitated, so you will have to go back and revive it in your pal box, but for that one-shot damage, very good. Now when we move on to some of that middle and later game, we have a couple. First off, we have Toku. When you catch these and craft that saddle for it to turn it into an egg launcher or grenade launcher. This is also good, kind of like the Penglet, but a little less in the incapacitative state, so you can just continuously shoot this out like a GL, do some pretty good damage on some of those targets, wipe out a lot of pals in an area if you're trying to just get some XP by getting defeats. So this is also a very good partner skill. Now we also have Relaxosaurus and Relaxosaurus Lux. They have a missile turret that you can use, kind of the same way as the Toko. Very good at that ad clear, if you will, potential of the attack with this pal. You do have to climb on its back and use it, but the Mausanda that we're going to throw in this category, very similar, also has a missile launcher. So both of those in the Mausanda as well as the Relaxosaurus Lux use those missile turrets as very good skills, can do a pretty good amount of damage on a single alpha pal, or like I said, clear out a bunch of those smaller pals for that XP. Last but certainly not least, for these good attack skills that these pals have, is the good old Grisbolt with that Gatling gun. When you get this thing leveled up to like level 50, get it stacked out with 4 stars, that Grisbolt with the Gatling gun absolutely melts through everything, the tower bosses as well as those alpha pals, dungeon pals, stuff like that. So very good pal to have in your pet game that you can get pretty early as well with crafting some of those partner skills. You got to craft them inside of your technologies. Now, second on the list, we're going to go over attacks that change the damage type for our person. So when you're shooting your hand cannon, your bow, your rocket, your auto rifle, whatever that may be, well, this pal is with you, both in a couple different fashions. Sometimes they just gotta be fighting with you, so out there doing the attacks. Sometimes you do have to be mounted on the pals, so those, in my opinion, aren't as good, but all of them will still change the damage type. So first off, we're going to go over those pals that you just got to be fighting with that change the damage type for you. So first off, we have Nox right here. Changes the damage type when you're fighting with it to dark. There are a couple others when you're riding that also do that same thing. Now we have Vixen for fire right here. That cat magician changes when it's fighting with us, allows us to shoot that fire damage. So very good for those grass pals that you are going up against, or ice. Now when we move on, we got Anubis, which is ground. I use Anubis very often. One, it is a very high attack pal in general, plus with its ability to give us that ground attack on our own shooting abilities, makes it very good for some of those tower bosses. Now, last in this category, we have Verdash, which is grass type. It turns our attacks into grass, so this is good when we're going up against those ground pals. Definitely one of the best attack pals as well for Verdash in itself as a grass type. Now, all of these pals that I'm going to cover in this part right here have to be ridden to change your damage type. So a little less effective because you take damage when they get hit as well sometimes. So you do got to be careful with this. First off, we got Azarob, which changes your attack damage to water while you are riding it. Next off, we have the Chillet, which is an ice dragon combination. This changes our damage type while mounted to a dragon. So pretty decent for getting some of those dark pals defeated. Next off, we have a Univolt. Changes our attack to electric while mounted. We have Pyron Knocked. Both of these in changing our damage type. Pyron goes to fire, as well as Pyron Knocked changes us to dark. So a little combination that you could have there. You could have a bunch of these in your party depending on what you're going into fighting as well. So you can just kind of go out and farm materials if you're shooting some of those lower tier farming pal materials, something like that. That might be what these are good for. Now, next off, we have the Meraith, which is a dark as well while you are riding it. Next off, we have two different birds with Beacon and Ragnarok. Beacon will cause electric to be added to our damage type when we are mounted. Ragnarok is the fire added to our damage type. Hellzeifer gives us a dark again, which seems to be a lot of different dark pals that we have on here, because we do also have one more with these two right here in Frostallion Knocked. Frostallion gives us that ice damage on our attacks. Frostallion Knocked gives us that dark damage, but both of these are also those S tier pals with their overall damage in HP, attack, and defense. So both of these are just good to have in your party no matter what, with those being the last two that we have for mounted. So definitely a lot of different ones that help us to change our attack type, but I would go with those ones that you don't need to be mounted. So Nox, Vixen, Anubis, or Verdash, very, very good pals for that attack. Alright, last but certainly not least for this video, we're going to show you guys what the overall just kind of best stat-wise pals are for that combat based on its HP, attack, and defense, giving it a overall total. Adding those three together, that kind of is what gives us this tier list here for the top 20 pals. So first off on this list, we're going to have Frostallion Knocked. Has 140 HP, 140 attack with 135 defense for that 415 total. The best overall on this category. So this at number 1 is 415 with a couple at the bottom with our 20, 19, 18, 17 at 330. So not too big of a difference between number 1 and number 20. Next off on this list, we have the normal Frostallion, again with 140 HP, 140 attack with 120 defense for a total of 400. Now, next off, we have a Palladus. This has 130 HP, 120 attack, and 145 defense for a total of 395. With the exact same total of 395, we have Necromus, just with a little bit different stats in the HP and the attack switched around. So Necromus has 130 in its HP, 145 in its attack, and 120 in its defense, giving us that 395 total. Next on the list is Shadowbeak with 120 in its HP, 120 in its attack, and 140 in its defense for 380 in the total. Next on the list is Jetragon, which I will say, speaking of this, that the 4 legendaries with Frostallion, Palladus, Necromus, and Jetragon definitely have some of the best just HP totals as well, in my opinion. If you catch those legendary Alpha Pal versions of them, 100% some of the best in the game. But Jetragon right here has that HP of 110, attack of 140, with defense of 110 as well for 360 total. Jormuntide Ignis is next with 130 in the HP, 130 in attack, with 100 in defense for 360 total, same as Jetragon. We have the normal Jormuntide with basically the same exact stats, with 130 in the HP, 120 in attack, 100 in defense for a total of 350. Astragon Paragon has the same total of 350, which is 100 HP, 125 in attack with 125 in defense as well for that 350. Anubis as well right here, 120 in the HP, 130 in attack, and 100 in defense for 130. But I do like Anubis over a lot of these because it does apply that ground attack for us. Plus, it just seems to be one of the best when you crank it up to that tier 4 for those stars. Next off, we got a pure fire pal with Blazamut, which has the HP of 100, attack of 125, and defense of 120 for a 345 total. Ice Reptaro right here has the very similar stats of 110 in HP, 105 in attack with 130 in the defense, giving us that 345 once again. Warsect is next with Grass and Ground, which has 120 in HP, 100 in the attack, 120 in the defense for 340. The normal Reptaro is next on this list, with it being 110 in the HP, 105 in the attack, 120 in defense for 135 total. Next off, we have Lylene Noct, which is a dark pal with 110 of that HP, 110 of the attack, 115 of defense for another 135 total. Suzaka Aqua right here with Suzaka Fire right after it. Suzaka Aqua has 125 in the HP, 105 in the attack, 105 in the defense for a 335 total, just 5 ahead of its counterpart with the Suzaka Fire here, which has 120 in the HP, 105 in the attack, and 105 in the defense for 330 total, which is our remaining right here at 330. So we have Orzurk next, which is also a very good pal for farming some of those pal materials because of its double drops, plus that electric attacks that it has is very good for AoE. We have HP at 100 on this with attack of 130 with the defense of 100, so a total of 330. Menacing is next at our 19 slot with 100 in the HP, 100 in the attack, and 130 in the defense. So attack and defense basically switched with Orzurk, giving it a total of 330 again, with last but certainly not least on this list at 20 with a Wopo Baton, which is 140 in its HP, so very high with the HP, but a little less on its attack at 80. Defense is nice at 110, giving us that 330 total. So those right there were the 20 best overall from just base stats, level 1 for HP, attack, defense, giving us a total score, which is just purely for when you're taking these out and fighting. Covered the other ones at the beginning, so hopefully this gave you guys a nice rough estimate of some of the pals that y'all should be getting out there for the combat aspect, going against those elf pals, the dungeons, going against those tower bosses as well. So definitely the best to go out there and grab. Appreciate all you guys for sticking around for this little longer video here, coming back to the channel as always, hitting up the Destiny 2 content as well as this Palworld content. So appreciate that. If you guys would like, hit that subscribe and bell button so you don't miss out on any of the content here. Helps the video a bunch. Also, don't be afraid to slap a like on it as well to help show everybody else what kind of pals y'all can catch for that combat aspect. So thank you guys again. Truly appreciate y'all. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.